Partnership is a special thing. Partnership is so much a part of any individual life. It's not just for some people and not for others. It's for everyone. People look at their human design and they say, well, am I designed for partnership? Oh, I'm single definition. Doesn't that mean I'm self-sufficient? Oh, I have integration circuitry. Doesn't that mean I'm meant to be wild? I'm meant to be on my own? I don't have tribal circuitry. How am I going to fit into a partnership? All of us have the potential for partnership, and indeed we need it. We need partnership. We need others. You know, we have so much openness in our charts, and there's a real resistance to conditioning in human design. The human design notion of conditioning, where you're being influenced by somebody. You can feel it. You're just there in their aura. And whatever frequency they're putting into you, and you're feeling it affect you, they're conditioning you. And that's what partnership is. Partnership is when you spend enough time with someone, you condition each other. You create this new energetic being that's the combination of both of your frequencies together, and it starts to have a life of its own. And the partnership is a powerful thing for each individual as well, because we take in so much of the other, and it gives us access to so much that we wouldn't otherwise experience. And whether that's the support of the other, or whether it's the individual mutative creativity or sharing experiences, or every one of our hanging gates is craving that connection with the other to fulfill that gate. So each of us is designed to be with others, and ultimately the most human design can offer in this area is to help us find the correct other, which is going to, again, ultimately, as you might expect, boil down to the individual, to the individual's type, their strategy and authority. But human design can also help us understand each other, to understand the other, to understand the dynamics that we have with the other, which can put the mind at ease. It can help us surrender into things instead of trying to control them. And we can experience each other in a more pure way without all of the interruptions and confusions and sidetracks of the not-self themes. So partnership analysis in human design can go in many, many different areas. You can look at the unique connections you have with the other person, such as the electromagnetics, where you have half the channel and they have the other half. You can look at the compromise connections, where one person has the whole channel, the other has half the channel. You can look at companionship, where you both have the channel, and you can look at domination, where one person has the whole channel and the other has none of it. There are many different aspects to looking at how two people interact, whether that's what centers they have defined, what gates, how those gates interact, the nodal environment, and the kind of people. But ultimately, it's going to come down to what is correct for you. And the ultimate decision to be with another person, and to have that person in your life, and to be present with them, that's a decision that can only correctly come from strategy and authority. That's a decision that the correct person for the generator is someone that makes their sacral center go, hell yeah. It makes them so, or the correct decision for someone who has the solar plexus authority is going to be the point of clarity, where they've already been excited and they've already been bored. And they've come back around and they've been through the whole cycle. They've been happy and sad. They've had pleasure. They've had pain. Only once they've had that excitement, that boredom, and come back around to being excited, can they make that decision with clarity. Splenic people can make decisions in a split second, and so on. And so the decision making is going to come from there. But everything else can be observed. It can be watched. It can be experienced. So besides decision-making, because that's the thing, there's no pros and cons list in human design. You can't make a list and say, oh, this is the ideal coupling between two people. Sure, we can have ideas like generators and generators, or projectors and projectors, sameness. Sameness is somewhat of an ideal because there's so much less pulling you away from what you are. There's the idea that with sameness you can be more yourself, but that's also impossible, because even if you have the same gait, even if you have the same line, there's the color, there's the tone, there's the bass. We're meant to be different. We're meant to be differentiated. And particularly when it comes to projectors, the projector is meant to be conditioned more than any other type, meant to take in the conditioning from other people, from the other. The reflector is meant to be conditioned from the transits, but the projector, they experience that recognition through the conditioning from the other. It's only when they experience the other's frequency that they can actually know if the other is truly recognizing them or not, and what it is that they are recognizing in them. Because I don't want these terms to be abstract. People talk about, oh, I feel recognized, or the generator, oh, I had a sacral response. These are very practical things that you can look for. You can get right down to the nitty-gritty of it, and you can experience directly what is recognition for you as an individual, as a projector, or for a sacral person. What is that sacral response? People ask, what is the sacral response? Well, if you have to ask, you don't know. And it's something that, it's like if you have to ask, you haven't had it. And you need to have had it to experience it, then it becomes something obvious. And you can describe it, but it's nothing like having that experience. I'm a generator. I have a sacral response. If somebody asks me if I want to do something, and I have a strong sacral response to that, it's like Scooby-Doo. It's like, it's something bubbles up, something activates. There's something inside of me that is galvanized, is charged, is energized, vitalized. And I feel that vitality. If somebody asks me to do something I don't want to do it, it's such a buzzkill. It's depressing. It's a drag. It makes me want to sigh. Sometimes I'll just be sitting there reading an email, and I'll get an email and I'll just sigh. That's a sacral response. That is the sacral. It's not to say that other people don't have this experience. They do. It's just that for me, that is my guiding authority. Everyone can experience it, but what's important for me is that I follow that, and that I honor it, and I stay true to it. So each of us is going to have experiences, and it's possible to identify them precisely. You can identify precisely what and how you feel recognized by the other. It doesn't have to be a blanket abstraction. Any of the projected channels can be recognized. A projector with the 4037, the 2-4 we have here with the 4037, that's going to be the theme of recognition of the tribal bond, recognition of being a fair person, being recognized for being fair, for maintaining the bargain, for knowing what's a fair bargain, for holding up their end of the bargain. That's going to be recognition for being trustworthy, recognition for loyalty, for working for the other person, giving love to the other person, even out of them. We have the 1-3 projector, and we have the 2-4 projector. The 1-3 doesn't have the 4037, doesn't have defined ego. Therefore, the 4037 is going to dominate in this way, and this is going to be something that the 1-3 is going to see in them. The 1-3 is going to easily see that 4037 characteristic coming out, that bargain, that tribal bond. That's how domination works. When one person has the whole channel and the other has none of it, the other can see that person, that quality, very easily. For instance, the 1-3 has the 1762. That's going to be that logical quality that's going to just come through so obviously to the 2-4. But the 6447 is not going to be as obvious. That's a compromise, because the 2-4 has gate 47. So that 64-47 is going to work a little bit differently. That's going to be something where the person with the whole channel is going to just be doing their thing. They're going to be operating out of that. The person with half the channel is going to want to be involved in that process and not going to have any say in it. The compromises are the most frustrating aspects. The best thing you can do with a compromise is to accept it. You know, you're not going to find recognition in that compromise. I mean, maybe. I shouldn't say never, but you know, these are going to be areas where it's ultimately going to be a disconnect, where one person is trying to connect, but the other's already connected. They're already connected to themselves. They're already self-sufficient in that process. So the one with the 64-47 is fully self-sufficient in identifying what is confusing and following that through to completion, to making sense of that confusion. That 64 is the gate of confusion. The 47 is making sense of that confusion. It's coming to certainties around that confusion. Well, for someone who's self-sufficient in that process, the 1-3 here is going to be entirely self-sufficient in following that process to its conclusion, whereas the 2-4 may wish to be involved, may wish to be able to have a say in that, might even disagree and say, I don't find that confusing, I think this is confusing, and the 1-3 will override. That frequency is going to override. The person with the whole channel essentially overrides that theme. It works like dominance, it's just that the one with half the channel, it's harder for them to submit. In fact, submitting is the best thing they can do. The absolute best thing you can do in a compromise is to just fully submit and let the other person dominate in that area. So they have the 64-47, they say, well, that's not confusing at all. You go, okay. Even if you feel it's confusing, you just let them decide what is and isn't confusing. And you have them say, this makes sense. It doesn't make sense to you, but you know, they say that, and you go, okay. You just let them say it makes sense, and you don't disagree, and you don't get in the way of that, because you'll never win. With the compromise, you can't be a part of that process. You know, these are each processes. Each channel has its own process, and the 64-47 is the process of moving from confusion to clarity, to where things make sense, to having epiphanies, realizations. Well, when there's a compromise there, the person with the whole channel is going to be in charge of that process. The one with half the channel has to get out of the way. It's the same thing with this 28-38 that we have here. The 28-38 is the process of staying true to what gives you purpose. The 28 is finding a higher purpose in life. And the 38 is having the root energy, the fighting spirit, to stick by that purpose. You know, this is Martin Luther King Jr., this is Gandhi. This is the ability to stick to something where we don't want Martin Luther King Jr. to compromise. We don't want him, you know, the person with the 28-38, that whole channel, they'll never compromise. I mean, anyone with a full channel is not going to compromise, but the 28-38 is like, even on its own, it's known for being unyielding. You know, it never gives up. It's a design of stubbornness. These are the people who play chicken and they won't turn the card because they would rather stay the course at any cost. The 28-38 is that energy to stay true to that purpose. It's the energy to struggle. It's the stubbornness to continue struggling. And it's a deaf channel. You know, all the deaf channels, the 28-38, the 39-55, the 43-23, when the person has the whole channel, they can selectively become deaf. Only when they have the whole channel, by the way. If you have half the channel, it doesn't work like this. But if you have the whole channel, what's going to happen is there's going to be particular times. And I suppose even if you have half the channel, you get to experience this when there's a transit or when somebody else activates it. So you can still experience it. But when you have the whole channel, it's a consistent dynamic where there will be times when the pulse is on, because these are individual channels, so they go on, off, on, off. The pulse activates, deactivates, you know. And when the pulse is on, when it's activated, you cannot get through to them. They will not hear a word you're saying. That 4323, when its pulse is on, it either knows or it doesn't know, and you can't get through to it. If it knows, you cannot convince it otherwise. If it doesn't know, nothing you can say will make it know. You know, the 3955, when they're in a certain mood, nothing you can say will shake that mood. Well, the 2838 is the same thing. Nothing you can say to them will get through. You cannot access them. You cannot influence them. And this is how it should be, because it's an individual channel. The individual keynote is empowerment. The individual is about remaining empowered in who they are. So the 1-3 here, who has the 2838, they need to stay empowered from that root to spleen, that channel of struggle, that fighter connecting to that sense of purpose, higher sense of purpose. That's so important for them to not give in, and that's actually correct for them. It's important for them to not ever be affected or interfered with in these particular areas when the struggle is on, when it's time for them to struggle. They can't back down. What does that mean for the 2-4 who has gate 28? The 2-4 with gate 28 is going to have to submit. They're going to have to submit, you know. The 1-3 is going to say, well, I think this is the way it is. And the 2-4 says, well, I disagree. And the 1-3 says, you're wrong. The 2-4 basically has to say, okay, all right. They have to submit, you know. You're out hiking, and the 2-4 says, I think it's this way back to the camp. And the 1-3 says, no, it's not, it's that way. Well, the 2-4 has to submit. And do you know how difficult this can be? How unrecognized that 2-4 may feel as a projector? How frustrating it would be for a generator? How much anger that the manifestor would have, or disappointment from the reflector? These compromises bring out our not-self themes. These compromises can be tremendous dilemmas, and they never really go away. They never change. The only thing you can do is the person with half the channel has to submit. That's it. There's no other option. And the person with the whole channel is not even going to realize it, not even going to notice it. They're oblivious to the dynamic. They don't see it. You tell the person with the 2838, wow, you're stubborn. They say, no, I'm not. You say, yes, you are. They go, no, I'm not. And you're going to have to submit and agree with them, because they're going to stubbornly hold on to that, you know. Or the person that has, you know, the 6447, you say, that's really confusing. They say, no, it isn't. You're going to have to eventually go along with them, because they're going to determine what is and isn't confusing. So the compromise is a very interesting dynamic. I mean, interesting is putting it mildly. It's more the way Ra puts it, Ra Uru Hu, who, you know, the messenger of human design, he talks about it as the petty tyrant. This is a term that he took from the Carlos Castaneda books about Don Juan. The petty tyrant is essentially the person who controls you, or who you have to put up with, you know, the person who frustrates or makes you feel bitter, all these kinds of, you know, the compromises in the chart, those are our petty tyrants. And the best we can do is, it's really a test of our grace. It's a test of how much can we just let it go, you know. Can we really surrender? Oh, do we feel like we've come so far in our journey, in our process, that we've surrendered to life? Well, here's a test. If you can surrender, you can deal with all this, you know. It doesn't affect you. It doesn't activate those not self themes and those defense mechanisms and that mental decision making that jumps up and tries to do something about it. It's not easy. So ultimately, all of this level of understanding, again, it's not meant to help us make decisions. I'm not going to look at a chart that I have with somebody and say, oh, we have 10 compromises. This means we're not correct. It can be completely correct for you to be with that person with 10 compromises. It just means this is the dynamic, and the dynamic is not going to change. Human design is good at showing you what you can rely on and what you can't. You look at your chart and you see what is consistent within you. That's who you really are. And what's not consistent within you. What can't you rely on? What is changing? The conditioning, the openness in the chart. Human design is about showing you the consistency so that you can surrender to it. And these are consistent patterns. This is consistent. When you look at that compromise in the chart, you look at one person who has the 28-38 and the other only has the 28, that's a consistent dynamic. That 28-38, they're going to selectively, again, not all the time, but certain times, they're going to be locked into something, locked into that struggle, and you're not going to be able to get through to them, and it doesn't matter what you say. And the sooner you realize it doesn't matter what you say, the better. Because if you argue with them, it's not going to make any difference. And it's just going to activate those not-self themes even more. You're going to get more and more bitter the more you try to get through to somebody when they're activated in that way. So let's talk about some of the differences here. So we have a 1-3 and a 2-4. The first line process is very different from the second line process. And they can honor and respect each other. It just doesn't come naturally. It's not the same way that the first line honors and respects the fourth line naturally, the harmony, or the second line and the fifth. Now there is a connection because the 1-3 and the 2-4 do have a harmony. The first line has the harmony to the fourth line. So the 1-3 has a conscious personality that is actually very harmonious with the unconscious of the 2-4. But there's going to be some differences. The first line really wants to get to the bottom of things. The first line is going to go through tremendous effort to get to the bottom of things. They're going to have this prolonged, almost courtship phase in a relationship, or this phase of the relationship of knowing whether or not they can trust the other. So the first line is going to have issues around trust. Both do in a way, because both are part of that splenic binary. The first and the second line are both part of the spleen, which is about safety and what we can trust. But the first line is particularly going to be testing. They're going to want to penetrate the defenses of the other and to really observe and learn as much as possible. They're very introspective. Well, the second line is going to have a totally different bonding strategy. The second line is going to be shy, and then it's selectively going to be bold, moments of boldness. But it's primarily going to bond through its shyness. So the second line is going to have higher defenses, which are essentially there to make sure that only the right ones get through, that very few people actually break through those defenses and call them out. So the first line is going to be investigating and exploring and penetrating and examining, and it's going to be essentially trying to find something solid and trustworthy. You know, if you ever lie to a first line, it's pretty much over. It breaks their trust forever. There's kids that have been lied to by their parents that, as little children, their first lines, they're still holding on to it somewhere deep inside them. Somewhere inside them, they're not able to let go of that. So that first line process, it's so important to be honest, and it's so important to have trust. Well, the second line cares about that too. It's just the second line isn't going to be introspecting, it's going to be living it. The second line is saying, why learn about it when I can just be it, when I can live it out? So that second line process is going to be much more existential, and it's not going to want to be bothered as much with the investigations and all the hard work of learning about things. However, it's going to rely on a foundation too. It's going to need a solid foundation, an anchor, which is its fourth line unconscious. The fourth line unconscious is a solid foundation in the social network, in the friend network, the friend group. So that 2-4 is going to need to have these things, having that friend group and having that connection. Well, the 1-3, they're supported as well, but they're supported by a third line unconscious, which can handle a lot of chaos. It's a different animal. The third line unconscious is willing to put up with a lot more change and a lot more unrest. It's building its solid, stable first line process, but it's doing it through the trial and error of the third line. So there's going to be a little bit of a difference here in that the first line, the 1-3, is going to feel stagnant in a certain existential process that feels natural to the 2-4. The 1-3 is going to need more change. They're going to need a certain amount of chaos and anarchy. They're going to need things to periodically be torn down and built back up. The 2-4, they're going to need essentially a safe place where they can be themselves in that second line existential process, which really is the natural. It enjoys being natural. It enjoys being itself. It enjoys being left alone, or even left alone together in the case of a couple, that you two as a couple could be left alone by others. The first line likes to be left alone also in its investigations, but it's a little different in that it's not as existential. You know, it has a goal. Its goal is to become the authority. Its goal is to become the master. So it's willing to align itself to other masters, to learn from them. So again, just being aware of these, there's no right or wrong pairing. It's about appreciating and respecting each other. A big part of this is respect. When you really surrender to the dynamics at work, you're able to respect each other through honoring who the other actually is instead of who you wish they were. So you can respect the 1-3 by allowing the 1-3 its time to investigate, and by realizing it needs a long time to get to the bottom of things to build that trust. And it needs a certain amount of chaos and trial and error to fuel that process. You can respect the 2-4 by acknowledging their need for that stability in their social network, by acknowledging their need to be left alone and not interfered with all the time, and their need to be called out. That the 2-4 is going to jump into action, that it has two different phases. It's going to be the depleter or the nourisher, and it's only the nourisher when it's called to nourish. Similarly, there's a point that each type should be respected by honoring its strategy and authority. So the 2-4 here has solar plexus authority. The 1-3 has splenic authority. There's a big difference between these two. You know, the splenic authority can make a decision in the moment. The solar plexus authority has to go through that wave. So respect here means inviting each other. It means giving each other that attention to express and not putting each other on the spot. To invite someone is very different than asking them a yes or no question. Asking a yes or no question puts somebody on the spot. You know, do you want to do this? Well, what do you think about it? It's very different than saying, you're welcome to tell me if you like. You're welcome to, we can talk about this. I'm going to be there and you're welcome to come along. It's very different than saying, do you want to go there? Making each other feel welcome is so important for projector, in any partnership that has to do with two projectors. Being welcome and feeling that you're welcome without being pressured, that you're welcome to talk about something without that thing being demanded of you, that you're welcome to go places without being expected to go there. There's no expectation, there's no demand, there's no pressure. It's an invitation. An invitation is so different. It's welcoming each other, making each other feel welcome. So different than asking a yes or no question like you would do with the generator. I don't ask projectors yes or no questions. I say, I'm going to the beach, you're welcome to join. So, so maybe I will say, if it's true, I might say, I would love for you to be there, or I would really appreciate it if you could come, but not, even that last one, I will appreciate it if you were there. That can put a little too much pressure, and I want to convey how much I would enjoy that person's presence without pressuring them and making them feel obligated. So respect for the projector is inviting them, is welcoming them without making them feel obligated, without pressuring them, without putting them on the spot. So you can think about what respect means for each of these processes. Respect for the solar plexus authority means giving them enough time to decide and saying, hey, I'm thinking of doing this next week. you know, it's putting it out there, and it's saying, I would love for you to come with me, just so you know, and please let me know if you'd like to join. And then giving them time and not pressuring them to come up with a decision or not putting them on the spot in that moment. Now, the splenic authority can make flash decisions. It can. So the 1-3 here with the splenic authority is going to be able to make decisions splenically. However, still, as a couple, as a partnership, you have solar plexus authority, both of you, because the solar plexus overrides everything else. So it's very rare to find a partnership that's not solar plexus authority. This is an interesting point as well, that you find that most partnerships benefit from waiting to make big decisions together. Because even if they're both undefined in the solar plexus, most people will have defined solar plexus together. Very rarely do you find two people where the solar plexus is not activated, between the two of them. So what this means is that having a relationship where the authority of the relationship, so to speak, is the solar plexus, still, obviously, the 1-3 in their splenic authority is going to ultimately make decisions for themselves with the spleen. But if you're making decisions together, you need to sleep on it. There is no truth in the now for this couple when it comes to making decisions together in each other's aura. You can each go off by yourself and spend a couple hours processing, and maybe even 20 minutes, it depends how much conditioning there is and how quickly the individual can shake off that conditioning and get back to themselves. Because if you spend a lot of time together, you might not return to yourself, so to speak, for a day or two, And in that case, the splenic projector here is going to have a very difficult time making decisions with their spleen, because they're going to be so amped up from their undefined solar plexus being activated that they're going to need to wait to gain that clarity. They're going to need to wait until those emotions run their course. So respect means respecting each other's type. It means respecting each other's strategy and authority. It means respecting each other's profile. Respect really is about honoring difference. It's about honoring each other's difference and not expecting them to be a certain way. We all kind of unconsciously project on, or not even project, but I'm a fifth line, so I always think about it in terms of the projection field. And second lines get a lot of projection as well. The second lines and the fifth lines both get projection. But I would say that we all have these unconscious expectations and assumptions that we have to work through, and biases. And this comes out in our personal relationships where I might, as a generator, be biased to expect the other to give me a straight answer if I ask them yes or no. So I might be saying, just tell me, do you want to go? And expecting an uh-huh or an uh-uh. And I might be so frustrated that I can't get that. And, not only can I not get that from a projector, I often can't get it from generators. But that's okay, because that's me, I need to wait to respond instead of initiating and putting people on the defense. And so much of respect has to do with honoring our own strategy and authority, and thereby we respect the others in their difference. I feel like the most important thing in relationships is respect. If you've made the decision already in yourself that decision to be in that relationship, and you've made that decision according to strategy and authority, then you can surrender, and then you can really respect the other, because you're loving them for who they are. You're not trying to get them to be something they're not. You're not trying to change them in any way. So the other thing is, single definition people are going to have a very different way of handling relationships than split definition. So someone who's single definition, their core dilemma is going to be their undefined centers, particularly the undefined center with the strongest conditioning impact. There's a hierarchy of conditioning impacts of the undefined centers. So the 2-4 here, who is single definition with the 3740 channel, the strongest impact is going to be that undefined G center. That undefined G center is going to be such a major impact that is going to be the fundamental not self theme for this person. It's going to be looking for love, looking for direction, searching, always searching, searching, searching. And with that gate 1, that creativity, it's always trying to be creative. It's searching for that unique creative expression of the individual. Searching for that way to really be themselves, to be creative, searching for that perfect outlet of creativity. Feeling, if only I had that, or I have to have that. I can avoid bitterness as long as I can be creative. I can avoid bitterness as long as I can really be myself and express my creativity. But in order to do that, I have to find it. I have to find the way. So I have to always search. I can avoid bitterness as long as I'm searching, as long as I'm looking. I'm finding the right place. I'm finding the right career. I'm finding the right relationship. Here's someone who's always searching for the right relationship, and they're always questioning, is this the right relationship? Is this the right love for me? Is this the right job for me? Is this the right city for me? Does this allow me my fullest expression? That gate 1, searching for that ability to express, searching for that ability to be themselves, to be creative. Does this relationship let me really be myself? Does this job honor my creativity and my expression? Is this a place that's fulfilling for me as an individual? There's so many different themes. If the person had gate 13 instead of 1 in the G center, that would be maybe looking for community or looking for a collective to be a part of or something like that. But, or with 25, it would be looking for a way to be innocent and pure and not have any motives. But with that gate 1, it's going to have to do with creativity. It's going to have to do with individuality, that individual creative. So the fundamental not self theme for the 2-4 that we're looking at here is the undefined G center. And that undefined G center is going to be a dilemma where this is somebody who, beneath all the other not self themes, they might show the world their undefined throat, and that, the people might see that and, oh, here's somebody who, has a lot to say but isn't really expressing themselves, but then once they get going, they're interrupting me and they're trying to get my attention and they're trying to get me to notice them and pay attention to what they have to say, and, or any of the other variations of the not self of the undefined throat. They might notice that, but that's not the fundamental. It's going to be getting their attention because they might guide you or give you direction, or they might be someone that can help you find your path and find your way. So there's this underlying goal of just always, always, always looking, searching, trying to find the way, never sure if you've found it. The undefined G center, they feel lost, and they're not sure if they're in the right place. They're not sure if they're with the right person. They're not sure, so they're always looking. And they feel like they have to look. That's the not self theme, is that they have to look, not realizing that your whole life, if you have undefined G center, offers of love are going to come to you. Offers of direction are going to come to you. You don't have to find your direction, it will find you. It's just being discerning. I tell people with the undefined G center, they don't have to find the right place or the right people. They just have to notice the people in their lives and be radically honest, following their strategy and authority through radical honesty. For the case of this 2-4 here, that's going to be solar plexus. That's going to be feeling of recognition. Do I feel recognized by this person, and have I come to clarity about that? Not that I'm impulsively thinking I felt recognized because I'm high on my wave, or I'm impulsively feeling unrecognized because I'm low on my wave, but have I come to clarity that this person really sees me, they appreciate me for who I am irreplaceable to them, they appreciate my ability to be fair and to have a bargain and to be supportive, they appreciate how loyal and trustworthy I am, they see me for these qualities that I have, and I have clarity about that. And if that person does, where are they taking me? And how do I feel about where they've taken me? Do they take me to a restaurant and the waiter spills their beer all over me? Well, then this person is not going to guide me. This is not going to be a correct person in my life. They're not going to take me to the right place. Do they take me to a place I love, where I feel comfortable, where I feel happy, where I feel secure, where I feel all these things, then this is the good person for me. So again, with the undefined G center, it is so important to be discerning about the people in your life. You're not here to find the right people. You're here to be discerning about the people. And this can be just as hard, believe me. I mean, how hard is it? You've known someone for 10 years, and then you start to realize that they're not correct for you. What do you do about that? I mean, are you ready to not spend time with that person? Are you ready to not, especially for a projector, the people in your life are the most important thing for a projector. And so the hardest thing to do is to decide, not even to decide, but just to stick to that decision, because the decision comes from the strategy and authority. It's honoring that strategy and authority and honoring that decision and not chickening out and giving into the conditioning and thinking, oh, what kind of a friend would I be if I wasn't? What kind of a person would I be? It's so important to honor that and to know who is correct for you. And so the right people take you to the right places, and you meet more of the right people in those right places. So the right person is going to take you to the right place where you're going to meet the right people, and they'll take you to more of the right places. And this is how you find where you're supposed to be. The searching, looking for the relationship, looking for the life path, looking for the way to be, the way to go, looking for the right job, all of these things, that is the not self theme. That is the fundamental dilemma beneath everything else. This feeling, I have to find it, I have to do it, I have to search for it. No, you just have to be discerning. You just have to be honest. Is that person correct for you? Well, are they taking you to the right place? Because if they are, then you're in the right place. You're going to feel good there. You're going to feel comfortable there. You're going to feel recognized by them. You're going to have clarity about that recognition. You're going to feel irreplaceable to them. That's one of the ways I describe that. People say, well, I'm not sure if I feel recognized or not. My friend asked me for advice, and I kind of felt like they were listening to what I had to say, but I wasn't sure. And I said, well, are they asking you for advice because of who you are? Because you're the only one that they trust to give them that advice? Or are you just anybody? Do they just want anybody? And that's a good question, too. Are you recognized by your boss? Well, do they want you, or do they just want anybody? Are you replaceable? So as long as you're feeling that irreplaceable recognition of that honoring and respecting you for who you are, then you can trust that you'll be taken to the right places, you'll meet the right people. And so fostering that discernment and cultivating that discernment instead of looking for the right place. You need a place to live. You don't go out and cold call a bunch of apartments or houses. You tell your friends, and then they take you to places that they found. And this is particularly true for a 2-4. Now, the 1-3 is split definition. So there's a big difference here. The split definition is designed for relationships. They are designed to be in relationships. Now, everyone needs other people. We all need partnership. It's just that the rest of us have to learn how to do it. We have to learn how to compromise. We're not designed to compromise. We have to learn, even quite literally, how to handle compromise. A single definition who's up against compromise is going to feel like, I don't need this. I'm self-sufficient. I'm independent. Why would I compromise? I'll find someone else I don't have to compromise with. I'll find someone else I don't have this dynamic with. Why would I struggle? I have this dynamic, this 28-38, and I only have the 28, and it's such a struggle. Why would I struggle with this compromise? Well, the thing that we have to realize is that being single definition, we're going to have this mental feeling of not needing the other. But we do. We all need others. Single definitions need others too. It's just the split definition who realize it, and they're wise about it. And they know, and the corollary is that we don't need any particular other. We need other people, but all of us can be self-sufficient to a degree, just as we need others to a degree. So a split definition isn't stuck in a relationship either. A split definition doesn't need someone else to complete them or bridge their split as much as they feel like they do. or as much as they feel like they need to embody that quality themselves to bridge the split. Here's the real trick for split definitions. I've had split definitions tell me, wow, for so much of my life I felt like I needed somebody else to bridge that split. I felt like I needed somebody to embody that quality that I was missing. Now I realized I can do it myself. And I say to them, no, you can't. You're not here to embody that quality. That is the not-self conditioning, the feeling that you have to have that quality, whether through somebody else or through yourself, that you're incomplete as long as you are missing that quality. That's, it's really a mind trip. It's a mind trip. I've had people literally, they've told me, my whole life I've been looking for that thing. Finally, I realized I have it in myself. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't have that thing. You literally do not have it. That is a not-self gate. Any undefined gate, any unactivated gate is not self. That's not who you are. You're here to experience that, not to be that. We experience things through our open centers, through our unactivated gates. So the split definition is going to have a completely different relationship to the not-self. They are going to have not-self themes of the undefined centers, but these are going to be secondary to the conditioning pull of the bridging gates. So what I'm saying here is that this 1-3, yes, their open ego is going to be a big pull. They have a completely open ego with no gates. Well, yeah, here's somebody who's going to be trying to be loyal, trying to make promises, trying to prove what a good person they are, trying to prove how much they care, trying to have the stamina and the courage and the capacity, trying to have the nerve, feeling bad about themselves that they don't have enough stamina, feeling bad about themselves because they're out of control in their life, All of these themes of the undefined ego, feeling like they need to be in control and being controlling as a way of compensating for this feeling of being out of control. Control is gate 21. 51 is bravery, trying to show their bravery or feeling like they're not brave enough. 26 is sort of selling yourself and being a salesperson and making a big talk of it and maybe feeling like they have a hard time selling themselves. And 40, this loyalty and trustworthiness. It's a gate of love that's willing to work so hard for other people. The 2-4 has this gate 40. The 2-4 is going to work very, very hard for the 1-3. Well, the 1-3 is going to try. They're going to try to make promises to do it. They're going to try to get better at it. Because the ego is not just about proving, it's about improving. It's about improving as well. Well, that's going to be a theme. But that's going to be secondary to the bridging gates. Anytime you have a split definition, the split becomes the primary not-self conditioning. That becomes the foundation of the not-self. So you're going to have this split between the head and the ajna and the throat and the G center, split off from the spleen and the root. And they're bridged by gate 57. And that's it. Gate 57 is the bridging gate. So there's only one bridge. And when there's only one bridge, that bridge becomes the focal point for the individual. The thing they feel like they need more than anything else. I can avoid bitterness if only I'm smart. If only I have intelligence. If only I'm aware. If only I really know how to survive. If only I'm intuitive. If only I get in touch with my intuition. Then I can avoid bitterness. You look at the gate 57 themes. I think of it as plain and simple as intelligent. Here's someone who really wants to be intelligent. They feel like they need to be smart. They need to tap into that source of intelligence. They need to tap into that source of intuition, that knowing. And they feel like as long as they know, as long as they're smart about it, they'll be okay. Well, that's not what's going to keep them from being bitter. The not-self always tricks us with its rationalizations, The undefined G center. If only I find my right place, I won't be bitter. If I find the right relationship, I won't be bitter. Keep searching, keep searching. Well, in this case, it's, if only I'm smart, I won't be bitter. If only I'm intelligent, it's anything that gives me intelligence, anything that makes me feel smart, or that gives me that resource that I feel that I'm lacking. And the 2-4 has it. The 2-4 has that gate of intelligence. So here we have the split being bridged. When that split is being bridged, there's a real attachment here. There's an attachment that can happen. However, there's some interesting dynamics. So the split definition is going to be attached to the conditioning of the bridging gate. But the undefined spleen of the 2-4 is going to naturally want to hold on tight. Oh, when somebody activates that undefined spleen, it wants to hold on tight. It feels so good to be around somebody who activates that spleen. That defined spleen is going to make the undefined spleen feel so good that there's going to be an issue with holding on. The opposite of this is the solar plexus, which the undefined solar plexus is going to push people away. It's going to keep them at a safe distance. It's going to keep them at arm's length. The not-self theme of the undefined solar plexus is going to be hesitant to let the other get too close because it's avoiding confrontation with truth. So the 1-3 here is going to have a dilemma around not wanting to rock the boat, and not necessarily, so part of this is going to be a fear of intimacy, a fear of not being a good enough lover, fear of standing up to tradition. They're going to feel like they have to be a good listener, that's the gate 22, that they have to be attentive and pay attention to the other. It's so important that they do that so that the other doesn't get emotional. And there's going to be a real skewed view of the other here, because when someone has undefined solar plexus, it's an awareness center, so it skews the perspective of the other. Anyone who has an undefined awareness center, it's going to be how they see other people. So with that undefined solar plexus, it's going to be seeing others as a lot touchier than they really are. The 1-3 is going to feel like the 2-4 is touchy, and the 1-3 is going to be afraid to confront them, and afraid to have painful conversations, and afraid to confront the truth. Afraid to disappoint them, afraid to let them down, afraid to rock the boat, nervous around them getting too close and seeing clearly who they really are, and just nervous around that intimacy. And it's all going to be because of this skewed perspective that's going to feel like the 2-4, who has the defined solar plexus here, feeling like they aren't able to handle it. They're not, they're going to feel like they aren't able to handle the truth. And the thing is, all of the undefined centers, the defined centers need them. People who have a defined center need the undefined center. And they need the undefined center in its pure form, not in its distorted, not self form. So people who have defined solar plexus need the undefined solar plexus to confront them. The defined solar plexus is down on their wave and they're down in the dumps. They don't realize it. They don't know. They need that undefined solar plexus who notices it to say, wow, you're kind of down in the dumps. You're not feeling well, are you? It seems to me that this is the case. They need that confrontation, but the distorted not-self theme of the undefined solar plexus is going to be avoiding that confrontation, avoiding that truth, walking on eggshells around the other person, even when the other person doesn't want them to. Again, it's a skewed view of the other. Well, the undefined spleen is going to give a skewed view of the other as well. It's going to see other people as a lot more dangerous than they really are, and it's going to see them as capable of taking away that feel-good, feeling, and so it's going to cling really tightly out of fear that it's losing the other person. So you can see how these, just looking at what centers one person has and what centers the other person has can give so much deep, deep insight into the dynamics at work. The 2-4 who has the ego and the solar plexus defined. Here's someone with a lot of openness in their chart, a lot of ability to really take in the other and experience the other through all these different ways. Then you have the 1-3 with the head, the ajna, the throat, and the G split from their defined spleen and root. This is such a difference. It's so different having, the person with the defined spleen, but the undefined solar plexus. They're not going to have any problems holding on or being clingy, except when it comes to the fact that the split definition itself is going to have some issues around not wanting to let go of the bridging gate. But here's somebody who's not going to have that same distortion in how they see the other. They have defined spleen, so they're not going to see the other as a dangerous person who might take away what makes them feel good. But, oh boy, with that undefined solar plexus, they're going to see the other as someone who can't handle the truth, who might be touchy and might be easily hurt, and who they have to be careful around not to get an emotional rise out of. So realizing how strongly we condition each other, how the 2-4 is going to be thinking about things that don't matter because the 1-3 is thinking about them. How the 1-3 is going to feel all this willpower and this ability to follow through on their promises just by being in the aura of the 2-4. The 2-4 is going to be urged to be certain about things because the 1-3 has that certainty, that ajna. So it's really interesting to see just basically the center dynamics, the dynamics of what characteristics and what centers one person has compared to the other. I mean, just honoring and understanding those differences, and ultimately someone who has the defined center, not wishing the other person had it defined too. Someone who has that defined ego, I've heard this time and time again, someone who has a defined ego says, I just wish my partner could keep their promises. They're not here to keep their promises. You know what they can do? They can get you to improve things. Because just like the not self undefined ego wants to improve themselves, they're not supposed to improve themselves, but they want to prove how good they are. Well, once they actually decondition from that not self theme, they're able to get defined egos to improve. It's important. Same thing with someone who has defined solar plexus. They might say, oh, I wish that other person was more real. Because people who have undefined solar plexus and they're not self are the fakest people you've ever met. They're hiding so much. They're hiding that truth. They don't think other people would really like them if they found out the truth about them. They're hiding it. So you have someone that has a defined solar plexus. I wish my partner would be real with me. Well, sure, they can. They can confront you with truth, with reality, but they're not going to be defined. They're not going to have defined solar plexus. It's a different creature. So it's totally fine and perfect and wonderful to wish and hope that your partner deconditions. To wish that the person with the undefined solar plexus has enough, ability, the deconditioning, to be able to confront the truth. To wish that the person with the undefined ego is going to, have their theme of getting you to improve things and stuff like that. But it's not the same thing. We have to be careful here because, again, the defined ego might wish that the undefined ego was better at keeping their promises. No, do you know how much pressure there is on people with undefined ego to keep their promises? And that pressure comes from the defined ego. I've literally heard people say, who have defined ego, about their partner with undefined ego, and my partner promised me, and I'm going to hold my partner to that promise. And I'm going to remind him that he made that promise, or that she made that promise, or they made that promise. So it's so important to make sure that we're not pressuring the other to act as though they have the same defined centers that we do. This is about respect. Again, it's respecting difference. It's appreciating difference. It's loving, really. It's, to really love the other person is to love them as they are, in their uniqueness, in their difference. So to really love somebody is to not wish that they were different than they were. I mean, it's one thing to wish that they would decondition, or hope they could decondition, or try to do something about them deconditioning, or any of these different things. Sure, okay, expose them to this information, see what happens in a way that's correct for you as a projector once you've been invited and you feel recognized and you have clarity about it, or, you have a splenic response, or, whatever the case may be. Sure, if it's correct for you, we're here to help each other. We're here to share our unique outer authorities with each other. But at the same time, also just drop it. I've introduced people to human design where they've had no interest whatsoever. I've waited and waited and waited for them to finally ask me about it. Not even dropping hints, because even that is too much of an initiation. Just like doing my own thing and forgetting about it. And finally they go, what's that? And I say, oh, it's this thing I'm into. And they go, well, do you want to tell me about it? And I go, okay. And, and I tell them about it. And they have no interest whatsoever. And I just drop it. And it's hard. It's really hard to do. Someone you care about, But if you really love that person, then you accept them as they are. You surrender to them as they are, and you trust that they will get what they need, that they will have the resources they need. And if they want the deconditioning resources that help them to, get more in touch with who they really are and get rid of the not self and all that, sure, then that'll come to them. But you can't force it. And it's not loving someone to do that. Loving someone means to accept them as they are and to surrender to that. So I think it's really valuable to look at each other's characteristics in the chart, to really meditate on these, to look at them. I'm just doing like my own interpretations, but you can learn all about the 2838. You can learn about all the channels. Learn about the 2010, learn about the 4037, how these channels work, learn these different characteristics, understand and appreciate those characteristics. Projectors in particular are going to be recognized for their projecting channels. And projectors only have projecting channels. If they had a generating channel, they'd be a generator. If they had a manifesting channel, they'd be a manifestor. So projectors are really recognized for their channels. The 2-4, who has the 4037, is going to feel recognition when someone recognizes that 4037, when they recognize that person's ability to be trustworthy, to do what they say, to be fair, to hold up their end of the bargain, to manage, to be affectionate. The 37 is the gate of affection, all of these things, to work hard for them, when they appreciate and recognize all the hard work they do for other people in their lives. It's going to be very, very different recognizing the 2838 or recognizing the 1020. The 1020 has its own dynamic. The 1762, the 6447, recognizing these qualities, these individual integration and collective qualities. That's something else, is that the 2-4 is tribal, and the 1-3 is integration, individual, collective. How different are these? The tribal person communicates through physical touch. They're going to want touch. They're going to want connection through physical touch, through support. Well, the collective matters how it looks, and the individual matters that they're heard. They're going to be communicating through sound. So there's so many nuances here, so many nuances. And just understanding these different characteristics, understanding the circuitry, understanding the channels that make up each individual. And so we can ultimately recognize and celebrate these characteristics and celebrate how that individual is expressing them. Because even when you read about a channel, that's still just a generic. It's just a generic. There's 80 million people with that channel and 200 million with that channel and, whatever. And it's how each of us lives that out. The same with the profile. It's what we do with it. It's how we express it through our own individual self, which is going to be totally different and irreplaceable. And that's where the recognition comes from. It's not recognizing a generic that you share with somebody else. It's recognizing the unique twist that you put on something that nobody else has ever put on it, before. So I also think it's important to look at the sun, earth, and the nodes. This is called the cross of life. It's essentially, if you're looking at the sun and earth, so you're looking at the incarnation cross. So the incarnation cross is very interesting, and just the dynamics of where each partner's suns are even. The 1-3 has the sun in gate 31, for instance. And realizing that, a person whose personality sun is in a defined center, and it is logical. It's collective. So here's a collective person who really wants to share, and is in the throat center. They want to share their opinions. They're going to want to share what they think about things. They're going to want to share their logic. They're going to want to share their experiments and the results of their experiments. And it's a defined center, so it's always active. And it's always working. Then you look at the 2-4. Wow, well, their personality sun is in gate 57 in an undefined center. Here's someone who's going to access their life purpose, 70% of who they are, at least their conscious mind, and their personality sun, when their spleen is activated. Here's someone that spleen is going to get lit up, and then that person is going to come to life, and they're going to feel as though they can fulfill and express and shine. Because, hey, if you have a personality sun in an undefined center, I think it was Richard Rudd who said that's like having 70% of who you are locked up in a room, and you periodically get to come out. You periodically get to shine, either when the transit comes along that activates it, or when somebody else activates it. That's going to be such a difference. And it's an integration, that's integration circuitry. That's survival circuitry. So just understanding the nuances and then looking at the incarnation crosses, how those play out. The nodes can say a lot too, looking at the nodal environments. I see some nodal resonance here. The 1-3 has nodes in 4th and 6th lines. The 2-4 has nodes in 3rd and 5th lines. So there's resonance between the 3rd line, 3rd, and the 6th. So, resonance is going to be important insofar as you're going to have similar kinds of environments in certain ways, or harmonious environments together. These are even like the kinds of people you bring into your life, and the kinds of things that are happening in your life. Someone with a 3rd line environment is going to be surrounded by a lot of trial and error, and a lot of experimentation, and a lot of mutation and change, and things like that. Someone with a 4th line is going to be surrounded by networks and brotherhood and sisterhood and all of this. And then you look at what gates they're a part of and how they're connected. Well, that 40-37, they're connected to each other. And so the 2-4, their entire nodal environment is linked up in that 40-37. That they're conscious and unconscious, their personality and design nodes are both in that 40-37, that tribal environment. That environment of the bargain, that environment of family and of support. The 1-3 is going to have nodes, the 64 and 63, the abstract and the logical head gates, collective, environments of confusion, environments of doubt and skepticism and uncertainty. And how different it is to have a collective environment than a tribal environment. And then the 22-47, and that 22 with its individual, with its listening, its gate of grace, its attentiveness, its ability to get attention, and then the 27 having its own, sorry, I said that wrong. The 47, that's actually connecting to the 64, so that's also abstract collective. So here's somebody who has mostly collective environment and a little bit of individual. So what does it mean to have a collective and an individual environment compared to having a tribal environment? And how these lines give different variations in that as well. But these are the nuances that can help to better understand and appreciate and to respect each other. That's what it comes down to, is that we can respect each other's unique differences the more we learn about these characteristics. So looking at the centers, looking at the nodal lines, looking at the characteristics, compromises, we looked at the 2 compromises in the chart, the 28-38 and the 64-47. Looking at the profile and how projectors interact. We looked at the split. We haven't looked at the electromagnetics, the dominance, or the companionship. So the electromagnetics are going to be particular themes of that relationship. Your 2 electromagnetics are the 2750 and the 1057. Well, and I would include the 2057 as well, actually. So 3 electromagnetics. and the 4426. So there's actually, so there's actually 4 electromagnetics. So each of these are going to be themes that you're going to notice, where one of you kind of plays one role and the other plays the other role, and then you synergetically create a third thing from it. So like the 4426, the 2-4, who has gate 26, is going to be kind of the talent, or the salesperson, or the one who's good at making the sale, and the 44 is going to be the one who knows how to caress their ego, and knows how to make them feel good, and knows how to handle them, and knows how to keep them satisfied, and together they're going to have a very material, tribal ability. I think of it as like the ability to manage resources together. It's the channel of capitalism, so they might be good business partners together. Compared to the 4037, that's the channel of communism. So it's funny that there's both channels here. So yeah, the 2644, that's one example. Or the 5710 is going to usually be about knowing who you really are, because the 10 is about identity, and the 57 is knowing, or intelligence. And so, and knowing how to survive in different places, and knowing how to not step on the tail of any tigers. 10 is called treading on the tail of the tiger. So together, this is a very savvy partnership that can, combine that to know how to adapt to a lot of different circumstances and situations. Maybe have a shared direction together. The 5720 is like knowing what you're doing. The 20 can be very busy in the moment, and the 57 knows about that. It's the knowledge of what's going on in the moment, very aware in the moment. The 5027, this is the classic, one of the classic child raising, it's the classic child raising or mothering channel, where the 59-6 is about having kids, or the actual act of that leads to having kids. And the 50-27 is about taking care of things. I think of it, the channel of custodianship, the channel of preservation. It's, these are people that are often asked to house sit, or to look after land, or to take care of things, to preserve things. They're great at raising children, they're great at overseeing things, and looking after things, keeping things in good shape. If they borrow your car, it comes back in better shape than when they got it. It's preservation. It's holding on to things. It's very discerning. There's a lot of discernment. I always find it some kind of cosmic joke that you look at the mirror channel, the 59-6, and this is how we choose our sexual partner, and it's designed to not be very discerning. It's not very discriminating. So if you're on the desert island and you only have a couple choices, or one choice, it's designed that, the species must be propagated. It must continue. Well, the other side of it, you look at the 50-27, once you've had the kids, think about how much people care about what their children eat, where they go to school, what they wear, who they spend time with, what they learn, what they do. Every last thing, how much energy goes into that. How much discernment, how careful it is. So that's what the 50-27 is about. It's about it's that splenic awareness of how to be responsible, and how to take responsibility, and how to take care of things, and how to just looking at those can be particular themes. The dominances in the chart are going to be where you really see the other person clearly. So the 2-4 is going to have a hard time seeing the 1-3 in their 64-47 or their 28-38, because those are compromises. But they're going to be able to really clearly see that 17-62 and that 10-20. And so how that expresses itself, whether it's seeing them as an opinionated person, or seeing them as somebody who's busy being themselves, or, there's different ways you can synthesize that. And the 1-3 is going to really recognize the 2-4 for their 40-37. They're going to really see them as someone who's trustworthy and loyal and fair, and all of these things. So, ultimately, it's about correct conditioning. It's about taking in the other in a correct way. It's not saying that you want to always be conditioned. Sleep alone, sleep alone, have your separate living spaces so you can meet each other, anew. But also, for the projector in particular, it is about correct conditioning. And to be in the partnership in a very clean way, in a pure way, where you're not distorting the other and you're seeing them as they really are. And then you can actually respect them. And in order to do this, it really requires a lot of trust that your strategy and authority is making the decisions for you, that there is no mental choice of the matter, and you're fully surrendered and accepting the other as they are. And so all of this kind of analysis is meant to help with that. It's not meant to help you make decisions. It's meant to help you understand who you are and understand who the other is, understand what you can and can't trust, so that you can ultimately understand the dynamics at work, the mechanics at work, and you can treat each other with respect. So it's ultimately about honoring and respecting each other and loving each other as individuals, as unique beings, as we are. That is, all of these other dynamics we can shed light on. I mean, I didn't even cover the fact that you have all 9 centers defined. I mean, that's its own dynamic where there's no release valve in the relationship, so to speak. 9 and 0, nowhere to go. But that's not a dilemma. None of this has to be a dilemma, Or these can be dilemmas, but they don't have to be. That's the thing, is that with surrender, with respect, with love, with real love for who the other person actually is, that, you don't even need to be aware. It's like you can be aware as a temporary step that leads to surrender. Then you don't even need to be aware anymore. All of this awareness we're talking about is a temporary thing, which is really about aligning you to what's correct for you, to your strategy and authority, so that when you trust the way you've made that decision, someone with solar plexus authority making that decision from a place of clarity, someone with splenic authority making that decision from a splenic awareness, having made these decisions and trusted and honored that allows you to surrender completely and to experience the other as they are. And that's the magic of partnership. I mean, that's the magic of the other person, of getting to experience the other as they truly are, with fresh eyes, not with all the emotional baggage or the mental baggage or the conditioned stuff and all the amplifications and distortions. I mean, this is about experiencing each other in a clean way, taking in the energy cleanly, taking in the energy purely as it is, without muddying it up, without combining it with all this other stuff. And when you do that, then it can be transcendent. I mean, the sky's the limit, and it can be so deep, and you can go deeply into a place no two other people have ever gone. You can find that place together that's unique to the both of you, that's the potential within both of you to experience together. And there's something really special about that and really beautiful about that. So it's my wish to both of you that you find exactly this deepening into appreciation and this surrendering to strategy and authority, and that in your processes you enjoy and love and experience the magic of what it is to be a human being and what it is to experience the other in form. That we are ultimately all here to experience life, and that the experience of the other person is one of the most magical, special things that we can ever experience. So doing that with love and respect and honoring each other's difference and individuality and uniqueness. Wishing you the best in your process.